if Jesus were here and he was doing a podcast and he was sitting down with somebody, his
Yeah.
body would be towards the other person, his eyes would meet the other person, his
Yeah.
attention and his focus is not on anything else but on the other person,
Yeah.
nothing in between.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel like God loves us. Welcome to another podcast, episode 7.
7. Lucky number 7.
Episode 7 in less than like 10 days.
Yes.
That's very intense. I keep asking Brie every morning, can we do another one? Let's do another one. And it never stops.
I love it.
Yeah. So today, I wanted to just talk about some of the grounding stuff that I sent you this morning
Yeah.
and how we feel about that. Maybe we
I
can
see.
process that together. And then also, I wanted to talk about World of Warcraft.
I love that too.
So let's just see how much we get to that. So I think, oh, and also another thing that I wanted to talk about is uh like would we recommend doing a podcast for other couples as well? So like it doesn't have to be this intense setup. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to have cameras. It could be like a cheap mic. We only have this mic because Mike
Shout out to Michael. Just
Michael
bought
bought it
2
for
of
me.
these.
And so yeah, it doesn't have to be super expensive. And I think it's a way for couples to connect and have intentional time together. And I think it could be a way for people to build relationships. So I think just what it would look like for couples to start
Yeah.
something like this.
Yeah.
And why they would want to. I
Sounds
know it's
good.
only our 7th episode, but I thought that would be an interesting conversation for us to have.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess we can. So just to give the listeners, I guess a little bit of context is for us. The purpose of the podcast is really for us. It's called the Us Podcast. What that means is that we don't want it to do it for others. We don't want it to feel like work. We want it to feel authentic and genuine. And so I was talking to ChatGPT this morning and I was like, hey, how do we ensure that this becomes genuine and instead of something that becomes like work for us? And so it asks some grounding questions that we can talk through. And I don't think we have to answer these questions right now because it's pretty early in our podcast journey. So I don't think we feel this way yet. And I think it's some questions for us to just consider and to think about as we move forward. And so, so I can just read them off and we can talk about each one. Maybe we don't have to talk about all of them, but just maybe have some conversation around
It's
it.
the ones you sent me, right?
Yeah. So the first question is, the most important question is, did we enjoy this? If yes, that's a success. If no, what fell off? How can we bring back the joy? So that's the first question. And I think that we do this often, like after we are done with the podcast, we ask, hey, like, how did it go? And I think it's also a good opportunity for us to reflect at the end of our podcast. And also, I think that question of like, did it bring us joy? Like, did it feel good? Did it feel fulfilling for us? And I think that's a question that I want us to ask as we do this podcast. And I think, like, as we are talking about this stuff too, we're kind of building a framework. I think that's why I talked about like other couples. We're building a framework for other people to do what we're doing if they wanted to. So like, hey, we're doing this. If you're going to do it, make sure to ask some questions that's going to help you feel grounded and that it doesn't feel like forced or anything like that. So what do you think about any thoughts on the first question?
To enjoying it. I think big yes on that. Yeah, I think it's been really fun. I think coming into starting a podcast, I was pretty neutral. I wasn't really negative about it, like, oh, like what podcast? But I wasn't very much like, whoa, yay, like it's like Disneyland, like
Yeah.
woohoo,
You do love
podcast.
Disneyland.
Yeah, please sponsor.
Yes.
Even if it's just parking. Yeah, and so I was just very neutral. Like I like our purposes. I just like it's a time and space that we're committed to just continue to spend together. So I like that aspect of it. So I enjoy being with you. I enjoy the laughs and the conversations that we get to have even more so often. And so yeah, a big yes on the enjoyment. And I think the only hiccups were like when we were first like establishing everything, when we are like moving the tables back and forth, the cameras back and forth, like, and then like making sure all my equipment, like my computer, like I would not charge it, and then
Yeah.
I'd be like stressed, and I'm like,
Why?
I only have 20%. And so that, or like when we're editing, and sometimes that one day it took me like all day. I spent like
Yeah.
eight
Oh my
hours just
gosh.
uploading and editing, and I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
Yeah.
So I think those are some hiccups where I was like, it just feels a little bit like work. And so, but currently it's been really fun. And like what you said about other people being a framework, I think it's a nice tool that we can build for people. And it's like optional. It's like if you want, it can better, but you don't have to.
Yeah, and I think that work part of it is becoming more and more automated.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, definitely it's still work
Mm-hmm.
because we have to go and we have to edit the
Mm-hmm.
videos and make shorts and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that does take quite a bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
Probably like I would say an hour
Yeah.
around.
It's gone down a lot though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so and in the beginning, it was like, oh my gosh, we're like figuring out everything. It takes so
Yeah.
long. It feels like so much like work.
Mm-hmm.
But more and more, we're like tinkering and we're
Mm-hmm.
figuring things out. And
Yeah.
then now it's pretty like smooth,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
it
It's
is.
like the OBS stuff is like figured
I
out. It took me
know.
forever to dig.
I know. Thank you.
Like we had to, so what we're doing before was we had like two laptops
Mm-hmm.
and then we would set them side by side and then we would simultaneously press like this.
Go.
And then we'd have to like clap to make sure that we're like in alignment with our audio. And it was a lot of like jankiness to it. But now it's like all on one device. We bought like a
Mm-hmm.
USB thingy, so it like connects all that
Yeah, we were
stuff.
running out of like ports to put in.
Exactly. You can't be like charging and recording and
I only have
doing
two
the audio
ports.
input at the same time.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this now it's like automated. So it's like really nice.
Mm-hmm. It
And
is.
because that process is automated, it feels a lot more fun
Yeah.
and we could focus on the joy stuff.
Yeah. It's kind of like astonishing how we set this up within, you did like 80% of the work, how we set it up in like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like for me, when I get like really excited about something, it's like a problem. I just get so intense at it, like every day, 10 episodes a day. 10 is not enough, 12 episodes.
It's not like we started like, oh, like 7 p.m. We're like, no, let's meet at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
No, let's meet at like 4. And then today he was like 1:30, and I was like, oh, can I go and do 3? We're like once a week, and now we're like every day.
I know. It's like, hey, like we were like planning, we'll just do like once a week.
Yeah.
Say no,
No.
4 or 5 times a week.
Every day. But it doesn't feel like, oh, again, it feels like, oh, yeah, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah.
So I think that's the excitement of like, it's not a scripted, like, you have to say this and you
Yeah.
have to, like, I mean, today is a little like we have questions, but it's not like we have to stay on this topic.
Yeah.
And so we can laugh. We don't have to be like, sound so professional. And
Yeah.
so it's fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's really true. Just being able to automate a lot of this stuff, talk about whatever we want. And that freedom I think makes it very joyful.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, since it's becoming automated, it's a lot nicer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we're at a point where we can actually have a guest
Mm.
and we can actually handle guests' audio and
Mm.
camera. And I'm really excited for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can tell.
Yeah. I'm like, that
He's
is,
this that's his next thing right now.
I know.
Guess,
I
guess,
know.
guess, guess.
So here's interesting thing.
Uh-huh.
So I woke up this morning so
Mm.
excited to
Mhm.
do the podcast. I was like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, this is gonna be so great.
Mhm.
So looking forward to it.
Mhm.
And then like after I came from work, I
Uh-huh.
like spent maybe like 20 minutes
Mhm.
on like just like scrolling,
Mhm.
like doom scrolling through
Uh-huh.
shorts. And then after that, I just felt so like less energy. Yeah, it was
Oh.
very interesting. Like all
Wait.
that
Uh-huh.
excitement that I had, it
Yeah.
just like got sucked out of me. Yeah, and I was like,
Oh.
oh my gosh, like I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
That part of it came.
Wait, yeah, can you share more about that? Where do you think it comes from?
I don't know. It's just
Oh.
this like deadening, just brain rotting kind of experience where you're just like
Oh.
scrolling, and it wasn't like super long,
Uh-huh.
but it just like drains me. And I realized that. I
Oh.
was like, wow, like scrolling through shorts, which is funny because we're creating
I
shorts.
know.
Like,
Creating the
I
poison.
know. And yeah, just like doom scrolling in a sense, I think just really kills like energy and kills
Mm.
passion. And so
Mm.
that was a reminder for me. It's like, hey, like you
Mm.
gotta really watch out. And so
Yeah.
something that you truly enjoy, it wasn't
Mm.
even the thing that you enjoyed became boring.
Mm.
It's just another factor outside of the thing that you enjoyed
Joy.
affects the thing that you enjoy and takes
Oh.
away from it. So that's something that I
Oh.
realized. And
Mm.
so I was like, man, I don't want this space to like
Mm.
be ruined.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's another thought that
Oh.
I had.
Yeah. That's a very interesting point. Like, it's the same material, yet you feel so different about it. Because one gives you purpose and one kind of like not kills your purpose, but like turns your brain off and like turns off that will, that motivation, that desire. And so you're kind of in a numbed, like, I don't want anything, I don't need anything. And so kind of like deadening state, but it's still the same like platform and shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. It was just like after like scrolling,
Mm-hmm.
I just feel less energy. I
Yeah.
don't feel super passionate.
Yeah.
And I mean, imagine people doing this for hours on end,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think a little bit is
Mm.
fine, just to see what's going
Just
on,
decompress your head a little
decompress a
bit.
little
Mm-hmm.
bit. I think that's good. But when it becomes like, hours on end,
Mm.
I can see, I mean, I've done that in the past and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like
Yeah.
how like not life-giving it is.
Yeah. You feel like frozen. Like
Yeah.
I remember I was like, it's just that feeling of like you're just stuck.
Yeah.
And you're like, I know, like I need to stop, but you're just like, it is, I'm here anyways.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like, eh.
Yeah. And I feel like dead inside.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm already dead
Yeah.
anyways. Like how much like deader could I be? And it's
I
like,
know.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I do feel that.
So hopefully maybe our shorts could be a light
Mm-hmm.
in the midst of
All
maybe
the
other
dead.
shorts that other people are watching. It's like a way to justify ourselves. No, but I really do. I really
Mm.
do think that at least the things that we are recording
Mm.
and we're putting out there in the world,
Mm.
I think is pretty positive
Mm.
and is God glorifying.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that I also noticed
Mm-hmm.
about this whole process is that really, I mean, if I had to do this for a job, like
Mm-hmm.
tinkering with things, I think I'd hate it.
Yeah.
Like it would, I like it just be so boring.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's for us and for our podcast, it becomes so fun. And I'm like, oh, what if I buy this? And I've
It's like Legos to you,
a
I
little
feel
bit,
like.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a little bit like Legos, and it's like, oh, how about we do this? And how about we do that? And it just becomes like this, like, ooh, like I'm gonna try this, and then it just becomes this iterative process of just building things,
Yeah.
and I guess not building, it's just
Uh-huh.
making things more like streamlined and making it
Mm-hmm.
easier for us, and I really like that. And just thinking about our guest
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to invite Rob.
Oh,
I'm
that would
really
be
looking
cool.
forward to
Yeah.
his interview with us.
Uh-huh.
Like, I have so many questions for that man. Oh my gosh. Just
Yeah.
like how, you know?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so, anyways, I think the first question I hope that we continue to ask is,
Mm.
did we enjoy that?
Mm.
Like, was that fun for us?
Mm-hmm.
And another question would be like, was it fulfilling?
Mm.
Right. And so I think that's a question for us to ask.
Mm.
So, second question is, oh, this is a great question. Did
Mm-hmm.
this bring us closer?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess it's not only just for us to have fun, but does it bring us closer?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what do you think about that question?
I think another big yes, in a sense of like almost all of the podcasts is like it stimulates me to think like, oh, like this is what Jay thinks, and like this is like I think I've had glimpses and like a generic idea. I know sometimes I like match or like guess I like know what you're saying without you saying it, and
Hmm.
then you're like, how did you know?
Yeah.
You're like, you know me better than
Yeah.
me. You're like, and I was like, I took like pride in that. And so I was like, I think that we've relatively like I've come to know you better than when we've started dating. Yet I think during this podcast it helps me to hear more about how you think and how you're feeling also. And so I know episode 5, I think, is like when it was a more vulnerable topic. And so I think those kind of like raw, vulnerable moments definitely brings us closer, definitely brings me closer, and more love for you, and more compassion, more protectiveness, and like more curious too, like curiosity of what you think. So I think yes, it definitely
Mm.
feels like it's bringing us closer. But what do you think?
I think so too. And
Mm.
I think a question that I have is, what is the difference between having conversations here
Mm-hmm.
versus having conversations outside of here?
Mm.
And I mean, we've had hours and hours and hours of conversation
Yeah.
in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. What do you think? What is the difference between our conversation here
Mm.
versus just our
Outside.
regular conversations?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one is like there's a more intentional aspect, like I feel like when you share something I'm listening even more intently and like thinking about what questions I can ask. It's not like a when we sometimes have conversations it's just light and we're in the car and we laugh and stuff, and then when we get out of the car we're done, like we just move on to the next thing. But then I think here it's like, oh, let me dig more, I want to hear more. So I think there's that deeper digging and a more intentional focus on my part.
Mm.
And like we're facing each other, like looking at each other, so there's also that like body language and like affirmation that like I'm showing we're not facing ahead in a car, or like if we're downstairs like I'm like at the table or like you're on the couch, like it's like we're intentionally in a space. And so yeah, like that focus, that digging.
Kind of like locks us into place.
Mm-hmm. Locked in.
We must talk to each other. We must
You
ask
can't
questions.
run away.
I know. And I think that part is interesting,
Mm.
right? Like, when do you ever just like sit? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
just have to sit
Mm-hmm.
and you just have to. I mean, we choose to.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just setting up maybe the right kinds of boundaries
Mm-hmm.
to be really, really intentional.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wonder what the balance is,
Mm.
because I think even though our purpose is for us to be just about us, I think
Mm-hmm.
there's an element where I'm thinking like, okay, well, people are still going to see this.
Mm-hmm.
And so there has to be a level of like, okay, kind of like thinking about that piece
Mm-hmm.
a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And but I don't really want to. You
Mm,
know what I mean?
yeah.
And then that gets me to think, well, then what's the point of recording it in the first place? If
Mm-hmm.
we just, why don't we just turn everything off and just sit and just talk
Talk
like
to each
this,
other.
right?
Yeah.
And so I thought about that. And so I don't know. What do you think about that?
I see. Yeah. Oh, I think that could be a method too. I think if we didn't have the component of like, I want to be able to share with other people, it would be fine. Like, I think we would still enjoy it just as much.
Mm,
Yeah. And I guess we'd have to try it out to see, but I predict that because we have a little bit, an ounce of pressure and like it is being shared, I think it does give me that, like, also like ounce of pressure of like, oh, I still have to be like a little more kind, a little
mm,
more cautious in like my tone
mm,
and like my words. And so, not that it like dilutes or changes anything, but I think it makes me more respectful in a sense of
mm,
my responses and my listening, at least more awareness,
mm.
maybe. Maybe that's a better word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. I think that kind of, it's just kind of like a gentle hand. It's
Yeah.
like, hey,
Yeah.
it's just like, obviously it's not so heavy where we're
Mm-hmm.
just like performing,
Yeah.
and it's not so light where it's completely not,
Uh-huh.
it's invisible. It's
Yeah.
just a gentle like touch on, like, it's like
Mm-hmm.
when students like mess around. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
don't do this now,
Mm-hmm.
but like people, like the teachers would come and they
Uh-huh.
would like just touch me on my shoulder. I'm like,
And or just
oh.
look at you and just smile.
Yeah.
Like it's like a it's
Yeah.
like delivered and
It's
you're
like,
like,
oh.
mm.
And so maybe it's okay, maybe not as intense as that. It's like a
Yeah.
gentle, just like a
Yeah.
gentle, like, okay, like,
Like there's a gentle birdie on like your shoulder, like,
yeah,
oh, like I'm listening.
exactly,
Like
like Fred.
yeah, yeah, yes, yes.
Fred changed
Embody.
colors.
Yeah, he's
I think
changing
he was red
colors.
before.
Yeah, he's changing colors, I
Oh,
think, through
interesting.
time. Yeah,
Ooh,
see?
I know you can't see it on the camera, but
Mm.
he is definitely changing colors.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was like having a philosophical like debate in my mind like a couple days. I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, if it's like truly for
Yeah.
us, then why do we need the cameras? Why do we
Yeah.
need this?
Yeah.
And I think there's a level of like respectfulness
Mm-hmm.
and kindness that comes out. And I think, yeah, I don't know. We'll
Mm-hmm.
see. I think
Yeah.
it takes time for us to
Mm.
see how this affects our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And we just know that up to this point, it's been
Yeah.
very positive.
Yeah.
And I think personally for me, like I have so many ideas and
Mm-hmm.
so many curiosities, and it just like bubbles up inside of me. And
Uh-huh.
like I sometimes, like, I'm the happiest when I get to process it out loud with
Yeah.
somebody. And I'm sure you know it. Like I'm like a
Yeah.
verbal,
Yeah.
very wordy,
Yeah.
word driven communicator.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think like you think that I would
Uh-huh.
run out of ideas.
Yeah.
Like you think that I'd run out of like, oh, like this, I don't want to try new things anymore. I mean, there are certain things I don't want to try.
Uh-huh.
And I think when it comes to this stuff, like
Uh-huh.
it's, I wrote this
Uh-huh.
in like my other social media
Mm-hmm.
like bio. I said that
Mm-hmm.
my curiosity runs at 1,000,000 mph
Uh-huh.
and my feet can never catch up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like that's
Oh.
how curious I am. And
Mm-hmm.
so even I was like, okay, we're already at 7 episodes. Like I think one of the reasons why I just wanted to just keep going is
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, okay, there will come a point where all my ideas will relatively be out of my system.
Uh-huh.
And once that point hits, I think
Uh-huh.
we could just do it once a
Uh-huh.
week. But
Uh-huh.
that's not the case.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that's one thing I learned from the podcast about you. It's like I knew you were very like good at like thinking ideally and like idea man. And then I think it was surprising how many ideas you had. And I was like I thought a couple times like, wow, how like frustrated and like boxed up did he feel when we didn't have this space that he could share.
Yeah.
And this is just a piece of what he wants to share. Like
Yeah.
how much is like packed inside of him. Like I'm like, oh, like he must have had so much going on in his mind. I was like, it's a very creative, very idea bank
Yeah.
guy, a
Yeah.
curious person.
Very
So
much
that's,
so.
yeah, so I learned the depth of your curiosity. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think like you would be in the same category as like Thomas Edison. Like, I will
Thank you.
get this light
Thank you.
bulb to work
Thank you for
1,000
always
times. I will try.
thank you for always thinking so highly of me. And I really
Uh,
do appreciate that because I
mhm.
don't think that like you tell me like you're a genius, but I'm like I'm really not a genius. And so I really do appreciate that.
Of course.
And yeah, I think we just are more intentional, I guess.
Mm.
And you get to, like, for example, like you learned something new about me
Mhm.
in the sense that, like, wow, Jay is very, I thought he was curious, but he's like way more curious than I thought he
Mhm.
was.
Mhm.
And I think for me, I didn't realize how in depth, like how deep you were.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
I mean, I
Oh.
always knew that you had a relationship, a deep relationship with God.
Mm.
And the more I talk to you, the more I ask questions, the more I realize, wow, Brie is like really deep. Like
Oh.
there's some, like, for example, when we're making the shorts and stuff,
Mhm.
I'm like, dang, that is so good. That is so good. How
Oh,
did
so
she,
so validating.
yeah, like how did she think of that? How those
Aw.
like how do those words come out of her
Uh,
mouth? Like I
uh-huh.
think that often. And
Oh.
so I was like, wow, Brie is
Mm.
really deep. And
Oh.
I think maybe like in our cars, I'm sure that we have had these moments
Mhm.
where we're like, that was really deep
Mhm.
and that was like mind blowing.
Mhm.
And I guess I don't really get to watch and rewind our conversations back to see
Mm.
it as like a third person objective.
That is very
But now I
true.
do. Like
Yeah.
I'm like making shorts. I'm like, oh, this is what she said.
Uh-huh.
And that was really deep. And
Uh-huh.
so yeah, like I see that,
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, it's
Yeah.
very, that's a thing that I learned about you.
Oh, wow. Thank
Yeah.
you for your affirmation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing that I learned also about you is that I
Uh,
know you're an I.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like, oh, I wonder if she's going to enjoy this much
Mm.
talking.
Mhm.
And at the same time, like I can tell that you are a very engaging communicator as well. Like I would ask
Oh.
you a question, like even like today, like as I was asking these questions, like I don't
Mhm.
even know the answer to this.
Mhm.
I was like, I don't know if Bree's gonna know the answer to this. And so I like asked it to you, and then you're like,
Mm.
no, this is what I think. I was like,
Mhm.
wow, she like
That's
had a really in-depth answer that
Oh.
I didn't think that I would have if you were to ask me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, no, for sure.
Oh.
And so I was like, wow, like we're just like patting each other on the back.
Not
Well, like we're
scripted,
so
non-planned.
amazing. You're
That's what
great.
this podcast is about.
I know. My
I
turn.
love you. I love me. You love me.
Yeah, seriously, it's all about just
It is
affirmations.
all about us. The Us podcast.
Yeah, and I also like, I don't know, the affirmations hit harder
Mm.
because when you recognize somebody in front of
Mhm.
other people,
Mhm.
it it hits harder rather
Mm.
than when it's done privately.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, when I affirm you or when you affirm me, we're doing that in front of other people who
Mhm.
watch our podcast or listen to our podcast.
Yeah.
Not that anybody listens to this far. I think everybody just like falls off that
Maybe they
like
happen to scrub here. They're
yes.
listening. Keep
Yeah, they're
listening
like,
right now.
okay. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so,
Mm.
yeah, I think that affirmation hits a little bit
Mm.
harder. And I mean, we do affirm each other and we
Yeah.
say like thank you to one another. And I
Mhm.
think we say that pretty often.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, like when we were saying it the other day, it like felt different. I
Mhm.
don't know why.
Yeah, yeah, that is so true. That is a really good point you bring out of that. It helps us relook and like cherish the moments. It's not like even sometimes like our memories could be distorted. But like, oh, I know he said something that he appreciates, but I wonder what it was about. And then like we can look back on it and be like, oh wow. It's like looking back at a letter in
Yeah.
video form.
Yeah.
And like what you said about like complimenting and affirming each other in front of people, I was like, maybe it's because there's more at stakes. Like the stakes are higher in a sense of like, it's like, oh, people are there, but you're like, well, this is what I think. If it's just us two, it's like, oh, it's just you and me. Like no one is listening. But now it's like people are listening, but can you still say the same thing?
Yeah.
So I think it's like, yeah, maybe it shouldn't matter, but I don't know. It feels like more courage was needed, more like, like, I don't know. Yeah, more boldness was needed to like say it out loud in front of people, others. And so maybe that's why it hits home
Yeah.
or it's like hits harder. And
Yeah.
I'm able to focus on it more when I like affirm you. And then the receiver is also able to like be very listening intently. And so it maybe
Yeah.
hits harder.
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, there is that definitely
Definitely.
like that courage and bravery involved, and yeah, and I think one of the dangers that I'm coming to see right now. I'm gonna turn on the light real quick.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna have to readjust myself. Am I kind of okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, oh no, what's my duck's name?
Dave.
Dave. His light is out.
He's like
dead.
kind of on.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He's on
on.
now. I hit him kind of hard. Wake up, Dave. So, yeah, I think one of the dangers that I'm coming to recognize is that there are moments where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna save this conversation for our podcast. So, oh, this is so good, but I want to save it for our podcast.
Yeah.
And so it's like that balance of I don't know what the right answer is because it is going to be like we're gonna be talking about it anyways off or
Yeah.
on podcast.
Yeah.
And so there are moments like that.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, what do you think
Yeah.
about that?
I was actually thinking about that. It's like I think we're kind of finding an answer to that of like when we had the most recent episode, it was like pretty vulnerable. And so I think we were at least as raw as we could in the conversation. But when it came to the editing, I think we both like checked in like, is this something you feel like highly uncomfortable or like unsafe sharing with other people? And like, what do you think maybe certain close people in your life can think about it? Like, let's think it through. And if we both decide like, oh yeah, let's edit this out, then like we kind of went through that like reviewing process together. And if there were like, even if like off camera, like after the podcast, we'd still ask each other like, how did you feel about today? And I feel like that doesn't always get recorded, but that's still like regarding the podcast, but it's still a pretty like heart to heart conversation, like checking in. And so I think like a mix of like we try to be as authentic and like raw here, and then it's not a hard like it has to be everything. And then we still have space to like step out and being like, oh, this is private for us, or I need like even more private alone time with you. I think to have that little like extra room right now, what is what I'm seeing it as. And so I think that's been working well for me. Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you
as you're
think?
talking, an idea that came to mind is that, well, we can just have these conversations, and if it becomes too private, then we just edit it out, or we
Yeah.
just don't
Like we
upload the
don't
video.
upload it. Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's an interesting thing. And I think another thing that I noticed as you're talking is that one of the things that I've seen you appreciate, and this is just my guess right now, is that you, I feel like you appreciate talk time where you're just like talking with me and we're just talking about our day, and it doesn't even have to be about really anything. It's just we're just talking and we're just
Yeah.
spending this time together.
Yeah.
And there are times when we like have like really serious talks where it's like really like we're working through it, we have a
Yeah.
conflict, we're like trying to resolve it, it's like hours
Trying to keep a straight face.
hours and you're crying, no,
I cry a lot.
tears are coming down. And so yeah, definitely like there are those moments. And I am feeling like, because I have a feeling that
Mhm.
my cup is being filled throughout this time, and your
Mhm.
cup is being filled throughout this time,
Mhm.
it really lessens that potential of it
Mm.
becoming like. So one of the
That
things
is
that I read in like
true.
the marriage book is
Uh-huh.
that, like, I don't know 100%. It's
Mm.
something like, when there's a general just happy feeling about the other person,
Mhm.
that's a really good place to be.
Oh.
And that's by actually getting to know the person. And there was
Oh.
like, it was literally a checkbox of
Oh.
just literal factual questions about the
Uh-huh.
other person, like who's his best friend, or
Oh,
what's the
yeah.
coworker, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That,
yeah. Well, we both read it.
yeah, it was not Christian guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I remember you were reading on the podcast and I went through the checklist part and
Yeah.
it
I
was
was like,
like, "Duh, duh,"
oh
and
my
you're like, oh
gosh,
no.
why is it so long? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think it really is a great way for just us to like literally get
Mm-hmm.
information about each
That
other,
is true.
about updating our
Mm.
lives and things like that. So I think this contributes to this like positive feeling
Mm-hmm.
for one another.
Yeah.
Obviously, some couples, I'm sure, if they were to be put into this situation, it was like stress them out. They're like, oh my gosh, like I hate this. And I think I would still
Recommend it?
recommend it and
Yeah.
try it out. And like,
Yeah.
it could potentially change your relationship.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think it would change your
Yeah.
relationship. I think it could add to your
Yeah.
relationship. I think the only person that can change your relationship is Jesus Christ.
Jesus. Holiness.
I know.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that it could be a tool where it could be
Mm.
very good for couples just to
Yeah.
use this time to get to
Yeah.
know each other.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. No, I really agree with that. And like, it's, I think it's a good practice. It's like a mix of like therapy with just like regular like relational building, like fun, like play with like it's all these things combined with like I guess information, just receiving information and like learning about each other. And like what it reminded me of was like there's a video and it's like two people, they just sit on a chair and just stare at each other. But I think it's
Mm.
like I think it was couples, but I think there was like parent and child too, and it's just no dialogue, which maybe could counter argue this podcast, but they just sit and they just stare at each other and no words. And like I remember like why am I feel emotional? But like some people would cry because like you'd see like the eyes of the other person, and I guess like you hear like unspoken words and like emotions from them. Cause and I think the reason was like how much time do we spend like actually facing each other? I don't know why I'm getting so emotional.
Whoa, that's deep.
Yeah. And so I do remember being very like impacted by and like kind of surprised by that experiment slash video. I don't remember what it was called. But I feel like there's a form of that like psychology and like essence of that in the podcast. Like it's the informational sharing, it is the like knowledge, it is the like quality time of spending time with one another and having fun. But then there's that, I don't know, that third piece of like maybe like feelings are being shared and like love is being shared. And so yeah, I don't know.
That's so good.
Yeah.
See,
What
you're
do you
so
think?
deep. Like, I'm serious. It's
For me, when I was sharing that, it was just like all like scattered thoughts. But
yeah,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that
Uh-huh.
because as you were
Mm.
speaking, a thought that came to mind is,
Mm-hmm.
I think we said this before, is that when in your life do you just face to face
Mm-hmm.
sit with someone and just look at them with no space,
Yeah.
except for a mic right now.
Yeah.
But other than our mics, there's
Yeah.
literally nothing between us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just me and you, and we're
Yeah.
just sitting together. We're looking at each other in the
Yeah.
eye.
For an whole hour.
Usually, yeah, like for an hour. And
Yeah.
usually, what we're doing is, like you're saying, we're like driving, we're looking somewhere
Uh-huh.
else,
We're
we're on our
eating,
phones,
yeah.
or we're
Uh-huh.
eating, we're doing something. But this is like literally just us looking at each other and
Mm-hmm.
talking.
Yeah.
And like people don't do that.
Yeah,
Right? People don't
yeah,
do that.
yeah.
And so, and I'm also very curious as to what made that emotional, or like
Mm,
what struck a chord with you about that.
mm. I don't know the complete answer, but I think I'm recognizing that like I feel very loved in this space. And like
Mm,
I think the reason that I love this time is because like have this feeling that like your all your energies, all your focus, all your thoughts, like all your hearts and feelings is directed towards me. And so I
mm,
know my biggest love language is like quality time. And so I think that's a piece of it. But it just feels like all of you is like heading and facing towards me. And so I think that's what makes me feel very loved and like filled in this time. Yeah. So that's
wow.
why I was like, oh, I'm like emotional because I feel so loved. Yeah.
That's so deep. Oh my gosh. What the heck? Where did that is the Holy Spirit or something right
Yeah,
there.
that is. Yeah.
That is so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So what you are saying is that
Mm-hmm.
like it's just complete focus.
Yeah.
Complete focus, complete zone in on you,
Yeah.
and attention. Maybe not
Mm-hmm.
attention. It is
Like
attention,
but it's
focus.
like a piece of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
My thoughts are towards you.
Mm-hmm.
My body is towards you.
Yeah,
Just everything about me right now,
yeah.
it's just directed
It's right
towards you.
here. Yeah,
Wow. And that for you feels very loving,
yeah,
or you feel very loved by
yeah.
that.
Mm,
Interesting.
yeah.
Is there a reason why you feel that way?
Um, I think that's just kind of my character of that's when I feel like one of the biggest ways I feel very loved. Yeah, if not most.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And as you
Mm.
are speaking, another
Mm-hmm.
thought that come to my mind was I feel like this is how God looks at us. Oh, that's good.
Oh.
Right? It's there's nothing
Mm-hmm.
between. Oh, now I'm gonna get.
Oh.
Um, there's. See, I can't. Like, what the heck? What the heck? I feel like the way that God looks at us is that His face is towards us, and there's, I think, even that Bible verse. Let His face shine.
Yeah.
What is that? What was
It's the
let His
Bible.
countenance.
Was it Genesis where they or Numbers? It was like, may His face shine upon you, where they
Yeah,
wrote the blessing on. Yeah.
exactly. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let
His
His face
countenance. Yeah.
shine upon you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if we were to humanize it or
Mm-hmm.
see it in some human example of it,
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be this,
Oh.
where even though He's spiritual and He's invisible, I think if, I don't know, maybe if Jesus were here and He was doing a podcast and He was sitting down with somebody, I think this is how He would sit.
Mm,
His
yeah.
body would be towards the other person. His
Mm,
eyes would meet the other person. His
yeah.
attention and his focus is not on anything else but on the other
Mm-hmm.
person.
Yeah.
Nothing in between.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel like God loves us.
Mm. Well, that's
And this is how
powerful.
God sees us.
That's powerful.
Yeah. And also I really do feel that I think it's like a positive feedback loop
Mm-hmm.
where if our relationship is not this,
Mm-hmm.
actually, it's a very symbolic thing
That is true.
where if there is even though there's no physical thing between
Mm,
us,
mm,
symbolically in our relationship, if there
mm,
was something between us here
mm,
that is going to block
mm.
our connection
Yeah.
and our ability to communicate,
Like open our heart. Like, oh.
open our hearts, and be able to see one another.
Mm,
And I think that just being in this space allows us to kind of maybe not get rid of it because we're not like I don't necessarily feel there's anything between us at this
yeah.
moment.
Mm,
Um, But anyway, so maybe that's
Yeah.
just another thought
Yeah.
that's just came to
No,
mind.
no, I think I resonate with that because let's say we weren't in a good place. I don't know if we could even record a
Oh,
podcast.
that is very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that would be a sign to show, like, we wouldn't reconciliate just to do the podcast, but it's a measure of and a way to reflect, like, how are we doing? And therefore, like, why can't we be in the same space? And even if so,
Mm,
like, why does it feel different? Like, what
mm,
felt off? And like, why does it feel awkward today?
mm,
Maybe there is some like resentment or tension that we didn't notice or we have been noticing or and refusing to acknowledge.
mm.
So I think it could be a marker of that too.
That's very
Yeah.
interesting. So if the listeners don't see a podcast uploaded for a little while,
Yes.
we're working through
Yeah.
something.
So maybe like a week, we're just actually taking a break. But
Yeah.
if like 2 weeks, you guys maybe leave a comment. Are
It's
you
like, hey
okay?
guys, you guys are probably working through something. Just
Praying for
wanted to
you.
pray for you guys. I hope everything is
Like
okay.
our videos.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Mm,
is very interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the reason why I have so much fun doing it is
Mm,
because I don't feel anything between us.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's one thing that I really appreciate.
I
And
know
we
when
got
I'm upset, you feel it. You feel the icy.
more appreciation coming your way right now. I think that's one thing
Mm,
that I really appreciate about relationship
mm, mm,
is that we communicate if we feel something.
mm,
And then I think this is something that we came to conclusion about
mhm,
is that not when we feel it once we
mm,
share immediately.
mm.
It's when it becomes this consistent thing. For me,
Yeah.
it's about like maybe like 2 to 4 times or like 3 to 4
Yeah.
times it, or like if it goes more than like a
Mm,
week or two, there's a certain feeling that I
yeah.
get when I'm like, okay, this is weighing on me and we
Mhm.
need to talk about it.
Mhm.
And I really appreciate that sometimes those conversations are difficult
Mm.
and it's hard sometimes,
Mhm.
and yet through it we are able to come out better at the end of it with greater
Mhm. Yeah.
understanding and greater love and
Yeah.
affirmation and for one another. And
Mhm.
so I really think that that contributes it,
Yeah.
and the fact that we can laugh, the fact that we can
Mhm.
affirm, the fact that we can cry with
Mhm.
one another,
Yeah.
it's all a sign of some of the, I mean, obviously we haven't been like, we're not like, we didn't have our wedding and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And regardless of those things, we had to work through a lot of things.
Mhm.
And through the working of those things, I think perhaps some of the fruit that we get to enjoy
Mm.
is like what we have right now.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Not that we're
feel.
like best or anything. We still have our struggles, we have our
Yeah.
problems,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's a million other things that we have to work
Uh-huh.
through, at least. And at least at this moment, I just
Mhm.
get to enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely resonate with that. It's like because of the hard, because of the difficult, it makes these sweeter moments more sweet.
Yeah.
And like when you said that, like when you're in that space of like happiness and joy towards the other person, I realized that like that's actually like a real blessing and a grateful place to be because it's not constant. Like, I feel like sometimes it can be just neutral. Sometimes it can be that like bitterness. And then sometimes there's seasons of where you're just together and it's everything so joyful.
Yeah.
And like the increase in that, it's like well appreciated.
Yeah.
Like, thank you, God.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not all like happiness and sunshine. And so I think though, like God, even like iron sharpens iron, like we need that kind of process and like sanctification in order to like enjoy and love one another better.
Mm.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think, like you mentioned about the sanctification
Mm,
piece, so important when it comes to growing in our relationship with one
mm,
another and the joy that we get to share.
mm-hmm.
And yeah. So I think another thing that I think, kind of going back to
Our
just our previous
template.
conversation, well, this isn't super related, but
Mm,
one of the things that I really also enjoy is that, like how I told you about tinkering.
mm-hmm.
And I think for me, another thing that I'm realizing about myself is that I love maybe tinkering for the tinkering's sake. Like I don't
Mm,
really even need the thing to like
Work out.
I mean, it'd be cool to work it out.
Uh-huh.
I think it's just fun for me. Like when I'm thinking
Mm,
about like how to set up the third
yeah.
podcast, even only is because of us. It's not something else. Like don't tell me to do it. I'm gonna do it because
Yeah.
I'm lazy. But it's because it's our podcast.
Mhm.
Like I start like tinkering and like I lose sleep sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta think about how the third person.
And drinks no
And
caffeine.
yeah, no caffeine.
It's just all pure energy.
So yeah, but yeah, that's another thought that I had.
Mm.
What time is it? That was 50 minutes.
Oh wow.
I really wanted to talk about World of Warcraft so
Maybe we
badly.
could end with it, or is it too long?
I feel like it's gonna be a longer because I wanted to talk about like Lord of the Rings and
Oh.
why I like World of Warcraft and why I want to play with you and just like I was gonna go really deep as to why World of Warcraft is amazing.
Maybe give like a teaser statement for the next
teaser
WoW.
statement?
Yeah,
I
like
don't know.
why is it like what does WoW mean to you?
It means so much.
It's life.
Well, okay, first of all,
Uh,
WoW is fun because I get to do it with you.
mm.
And if you weren't there, I would not play WoW by myself. Like I
Oh.
would not. That is not something that I would ever do because, first of all, like it's so sad.
Go.
Like why would you ever play WoW by yourself? Right? That'd be so sad.
Sorry to all the people who play
Oh shoot, yeah. If you do play WoW, shame on you. Go do something fun with your life. No, just
Rally
kidding.
your StarCraft 2 people.
Yeah, so I think I know this sounds lame, but I feel like I get to go on adventures with you.
Yeah.
Like cheaper adventures. I'm like, okay, like $15 a month is like really expensive. It's like, oh my gosh, $15 a month is like so expensive. So it's like $30 per month for both of us. It's like, man, is it even worth it? But we get to travel these worlds.
We ride dragons and
We
fly.
ride dragons. We travel the world. We look at the surroundings.
We just went to a new land yesterday.
Yeah,
We're
we get to the new land. We get cool items, and we're like, sometimes this is like way funner than real life. And so, I don't know if it's like way funner, but definitely aspects of the WoW world that's so
being
fun.
fun. Yeah.
And so, yeah, this is maybe like a little teaser for it.
Yeah. And we both like we both love Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And you tend to be more
I
of, like,
love Harry
you
Potter.
tend to be more of Lord of the Rings.
Wait, do you like
I
Lord of
like-
the Rings?
Huh?
Oh, I guess you
I
do.
do. I don't.
Like
I think it's
the
like,
Ring of Power. You like Ring of Power.
yeah. Like I don't think I don't dislike it. I
Yeah.
like it, but
Yeah.
I love Harry Potter though.
Yeah.
And I think for you it's like I love Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I like Harry Potter.
Yeah, Harry Potter's
So I
alright.
think it's like we stand on.
Yeah.
We like both, but we stand on
Yeah.
one specifically over
Yeah.
the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like fantasy, I think, for us,
Yeah,
right?
like the
And so,
magic.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that like I would have a girlfriend who would love to play WoW. Like that's actually okay. I'm like there's so much more to say. Like it was actually one of my dreams to be able to play World of Warcraft with like my partner. And we just go to dungeons together, like eat good food while we're playing it. And one of our dreams is to play World of Warcraft looking over the ocean.
Yeah.
Like it's not
Or-
even enjoying the ocean. It's like enjoying the ocean while we play World of Warcraft.
Nice scenic view.
Yeah. So yeah, there's so much to say about World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll just save it for our next time.
That was just a little like treat.
A little teaser.
Teaser.
I mean, we didn't even get to the any of the questions.
I
There's
know.
like
We got really deep.
yeah, there's like 5 more questions. We only got to like 3. So, anyways,
Yeah.
thank you for watching.
Yeah.
If you are watching, this is episode 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Episode
7, the lucky
7.
number.
If you made it this far, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
If you are watching. All right. Well, thank you, and I will see you guys in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, la, 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 la.
Jesus. That's heretical.